up, Bleacher Report, and of course, Bucs Nation. I'm your boy, Sammer Ali, hanging out from the Loose Cannons podcast, doing this special edition Bleacher Report live stream. The Bucs season came to an end finally. It was a little bit of a Cinderella story and a little bit unexpected, and of course, exceeding all expectations in all honesty, but it ended in Detroit when they faced a team that, in my opinion, is just a little bit better than them, and there's no shame in how it all kind of played out. Few storylines that go over from that game, though. First of all, listen, this team was supposed to win 3 or 4 games. This team was supposed to be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. They end up winning the NFC South. They win 9 games. It could have won 10, honestly, but I think some injuries derailed towards the end of the season there. But nonetheless, they win the NFC South. They sneak into the playoffs, and everybody's basically saying this team shouldn't be in the playoffs. Almost the joke of the bunch, right? The black sheep, if you will. And they go host a game in Tampa, end up beating the living garbage out of the freaking Eagles, and then everyone's still kind of writing them off. And they go into Detroit. It's a divisional matchup. It's a big deal, and the place is rocking. The Lions are supposed to kind of be the favorite from the NFC side, other than, of course, the San Francisco 49ers. But everyone's, running up the story of the Detroit Lions finally getting a playoff game, finally getting a home playoff game, finally winning a home playoff game. So a lot of stuff kind of going on and around this particular matchup. The Bucs go in there, kind of, like we've been saying all year, playing with house money. And what happens? They end up competing. They end up competing and going toe-to-toe nearly with a team that, in my opinion, is very, very good. And the Bucs showed that they had grit, they had heart, and they continued to fight, and they overcame a lot of adversity yesterday. And, of course, they've kind of done that throughout the season. They had the little stretch where they lost 6 of 7 games, and then they won 6 of 7 games, and they ended up pulling themselves back into the conversation, winning the South like we just talked about. And so they go into a game like this with hey, let's go out there, let's leave it all on the field, let's play with heart. Let's show that moxie that this team has kind of started to develop because of their leader in Baker Mayfield. And they played well. They had some hiccups. They had some opportunities, I think, that they squandered, but they really did have to play a perfect game to even come close to winning this game. And they ended up, pulling it, getting pretty damn close with the mistakes that they made. So there's some interception issues there that happened. I believe one of them really wasn't on Baker. The second one to end the game, that's just a heartbreaker, man. I think the pressure got to him, and he just forced a throw he shouldn't have forced. Baker will be the first person to tell you. You could see that it broke his heart to let his guys down. So at the end of the day, I think they exceeded the expectations that were set for them outside of the building. Inside the building, I believe they met those expectations. They have nothing to be ashamed of. You as Bucs fans have nothing to be ashamed of. I'm very proud of this team, and this has been one of the more fun rides to be on as a season that I can remember for a while. Honestly, it's been maybe that Raheem Morris 10-6 season where they were just kind of playing with house money, a lot of young players, and this is a very similar season, but they have bigger names on this team, and they weren't supposed to do much, and they ended up doing way more than that. And I'm just really proud of this team, and I think they have a lot of key pieces moving forward, with a really good foundation, a really good 2023 season to build off of moving forward into 2024. They have some money to play with in the offseason, not, $100 million like some of these other teams, but they have more than they have in the past, especially this past offseason. They don't have to worry about the Tom Brady tax anymore. That credit card bill is paid off. And, during a down year or a building year or, a rebuilding year, or during a remodeling year, they still competed. They came out there, they fought. They fought for their coach, they fought for their teammates, and they grew as the season went on. Dave Canales, one of those guys who I've been critical of throughout the season, kind of up and down, and he's starting to kind of piece it all together, and he's grown. Then you got Todd Bowles as a head coach. People said he's not a good head coach. He's more of a defensive coordinator. As the season progressed, you could kind of see that he was starting to kind of figure it out. I was a little bit critical of him in the middle of the season as well, but you kind of just have to, we don't know as much as these guys do. I don't think we're ever going to know as much as these guys do. But at the end of the day, I think they all continue to fight for Todd. And that was the most important thing to me is, we had Greg Schiano here where the team quit on him. We had years when Raheem Morris's teams, they didn't really respect him enough to even care. And so that, he lost the locker room in that fashion. And so in this particular case, even when they were losing, this team continued to fight for Todd Bowles. They had Todd Bowles' back, and they love that guy. And Todd Bowles, you could say he's a player's coach. I think he's a little rougher than people realize on his team behind closed doors. He doesn't like to throw guys under the bus publicly. He's a former player, so it's a little bit different for him, right, than some of these other guys who, like a Bill Belichick or even a BA, who really weren't players in the NFL, who, don't want to be thrown under the bus in that perspective. So they kind of see a different point of view on that. But at the end of the day, they put their best foot forward, in my opinion. They did the most that they could do with what they had. And I think they even could have done a little bit better, but nonetheless, they go up to Detroit. It's the divisional matchup, and they hang with this team. I think a couple lucky bounces, maybe some calls go their way, maybe a couple catches. Jamel Dean, maybe they pull off a win. They came within 8 points. They came within a interception there at the end in the fourth quarter, tying it up and going to overtime. And who knows what happens in overtime, especially in the NFL. But, some of the stuff that came out from that game, let's talk about Mike Evans. Mike Evans, people kept saying this potentially could be his last game as a Buck. He left it all on the field. He didn't have a great first half, but then right in that 2-minute warning, middle of the game, right before the half, he blew up. He woke up and he made plays. He got them to the goal line basically after 2 ridiculous throws by Baker and 2 ridiculous catches by Mike. And then, they get the score, they get the touchdown to Kate Otten, who's come on of late. And Canales, whatever you figured out how to use that guy, just continue to do that, man. I'm not saying he's the greatest athlete. He's not one of the best tight ends in the league, but if he's going to be open and he can catch and he can be dependable like that, and you can, exploit defenses with him, absolutely do it. He catches a touchdown, it's 10-10 at the half, and it's anybody's game at that point, right? We start all over in the next half. The Bucs start with the ball. Fortunately, the offense stubbed their toe a little bit there in the third quarter. They still hung in the game. Their defense kind of played pretty well, honestly, against the Lions. I thought they did a really good job of tackling. I thought they did a really good job of kind of squeezing in on the run of the Lions and not letting them get away from them. And then in the fourth quarter, I think the Lions kind of put their weight down on top of them, and they really started to run the ball well. They had a couple of big ones, and then of course the big chunk by Jahmyr Gibbs ends up getting that touchdown, and the Bucs offense just couldn't keep up. They kept making mistakes, and the free rushers coming in on the blitz, whether it's on Baker, whether it's on the protection, whether it's really well disguised. In my opinion, the Lions defense played a hell of a game for a team that has a secondary that everyone was talking about, and the Bucs not really attacking them enough, in my opinion. They played a really good game, and they disguised their rushes, and they disguised their blitzes and their schemes in the back end, and they got Baker and those guys to make a couple of mistakes. I think if flip it back to the other side, if the Bucs attacked that secondary and that defense a little bit more, like what they were doing kind of in the tempo moments when they were going up tempo at the end of the half, and then right before the 2-minute warning there, when they got the ball back and scored and made an 8-point game, like if you just continue to attack in that fashion, I think you could have exploited a lot more. Even Chris Collinsworth on the broadcast was saying something along the lines of, I'm really surprised that they're not attacking this Lions secondary, which is what everyone was saying was their weakness. They gave up a ton of yardage to Puka last week, and they gave up a ton of yardage to Mike Evans this week. But I think it was too much of a one-man show in that regard, right? It was Baker and Mike, and not enough Chris Godwin, not enough Trey Palmer, who has the speed and the ability to open up the game and take the top off the defense. I don't think they went to him enough. I don't know if the moment was too big, but I remember him being open at least once, and Baker just couldn't get to him. So, I think they still played respectably. I think it was a really good game. It was a really good showing. There's absolutely nothing to be ashamed of if you're the Bucs and if you're a Bucs fan, like I said earlier. Now, the season wraps up, and there's a number of storylines going into this offseason. The Bucs, like I said, have around $50 million to play with. That's before they've restructured or done anything with the cap right now. And so they've got 18 unrestricted free agents once the season ends. And that sounds like a lot, but it's not that big of a number, because a lot of those guys are kind of role players, depth pieces, guys that are going to be really cheap that you can keep, that you just have to kind of have on team. Like one of them's a long snapper. McLaughlin is the kicker. Obviously, you want to keep him around. He was, I believe, the best in the league in terms of his percentage. He missed a big kick yesterday, unfortunately. But those aren't deals that are going to break your bank or affect your cap in a huge fashion, right? You got guys like Will Golston on that list, and Aaron Stinney, who I think is a really good depth piece. I don't think he's really a starter in this league. He just gets beat too many times in a game. He's inconsistent. He's up and down. And then you got Feeler, the guy he replaced. So you got both your left guards technically as free agents, but I think Stinney will be the guy that ends up staying as a very good depth or rotational piece, whether they upgrade that through the draft or through free agency or maybe some sort of trade with, a B or C tier type of guy that you can bring in and just be, better than what we've had this year. I think they can then upgrade that line. But also you have to keep in mind that they have Robert Hainsey, we call him Bob Hennessy on the show, who is the starting center now only because of Jensen's injury, but he's more of the actual left guard. So you still have that guy there. So Stinney being a backup, moving him back to left guard, that'll probably shore some things up a little bit. Now, the big name obviously is going to be Antoine Winfield, Mike Evans, and Baker Mayfield, Levante David, Devin White. Okay, we'll start at the bottom here. Devin White, not only has he played himself off this team and out of a contract here, I think he's played himself out of any massive deal from any team across the league. And the Bucs will be more than happy to hold the door open for him, in my opinion. Just from some of the stuff that I know and some of the people I've talked to there, this has not been a good stretch run for Devin White and the Bucs behind the scenes. I don't think he wants to be here. I don't think the Bucs want him to be here anymore. Him and Todd are close, but Todd still benched him. And if you watch the last 3 games or so, he didn't really play much. He played okay in that last game against the Panthers in terms of how much he got to see the field. But in that Eagles game, he didn't really play all that much. And then in that game yesterday, you saw the impact that a KJ Britt brought to that defense. He was in his spot at the right time. He was smarter and making decisions, before his athleticism could lead him there. And he wasn't that, unathletic either at the same time. So he made plays and kind of stole the job. Is he the long-term answer? I don't know, because he's still kind of raw. I don't see him doing very well in pass coverages. But listen, he played with effort. And at this point, compared to Devin, that's kind of, that's a sad thing to say, but he showed more heart and showed more effort than the guy that you spent a 5th-round pick on. So Devin White is gone. He's no longer part of the math that we have to worry about in terms of this free agency period and trying to figure out how we're going to pay guys and keep guys. Now, the next guy on the list is Levante David. Some people think he might retire. Some people think he might not retire. I feel like if you're playing at the level that he's playing at, that he could still be like, yeah, I could still bring it one more year. I'm playing at such a high level IQ wise. I'm more than making up for my, age and my, I don't want to call him slow, but he's slower than he used to be, obviously, but he's still playing ridiculously lights out. So at the end of the day, if you can convince him to come back for 1, maybe 2 more years to lighten the cap a little bit, you got to bring him back, because you have guys like Dennis who are going to be their 2nd-year players. And you have KJ Britt, and maybe you draft another guy. And you need to have that veteran linebacker there to teach them how to do things, especially in this Todd Bowles defense, which takes a little bit of time to learn and puts a lot on those middle linebackers. And so if he can be there and he can be part of the mix and can continue to be the leader that he is, by the way, on top of what he does on the field, he's really good behind the scenes. Be able to mentor those guys and kind of help bridge that gap to the next, era of linebackers for the Bucs. I think the Bucs would be more than happy to make that happen for him. It's up to him, obviously, but I'm pretty sure they can convince him in some way or another. The next one on the list is the one that everyone's going to be talking about, I think, the most, not in terms of the worry part, but in terms of what are they going to do, and that's Baker Mayfield. He signed a 1-year, $4 million deal this past offseason. He took a chance on himself. The Bucs said, go prove it. He's more than proven it, in my opinion. I think he has definitely earned the respect of the team. He's earned the respect of the front office, the coaches, and every single one of those guys he goes to war with, they go to war for him as well as themselves and as well as the rest of their teammates. That's key, man. And then not only is it huge, but it's so respectable because he's coming from the shadow of the one and the only GOAT, Tom Brady. Like, that is a huge deal. I don't think people realize how much influence Tom Brady had on this team and what that shadow really was in terms of his leadership and his role on this team beyond just being a guy who goes out there and throws passes. He does a lot as a leader, or he did a lot as a leader. And for Baker to come in, earn respect, and then kind of grow that into becoming a vocal leader and actually demanding things of these guys, huge. I mean, that was massive. And I think that's one of the reasons that the Bucs were able to turn things around during that stretch where they were, losing games, and all of a sudden they got hot and they won 5 in a row. And then they end up winning 6 out of the last 7. Like, don't discount what that was from Baker as a leader, a vocal leader, not just what he did on the field. And he did play pretty well throughout that stretch. Now, what is he going to get? That's kind of the discussion everyone wants to go with. And you know what? I see a Geno Smith type of deal, something like, a very team-friendly, contract that allows the Bucs to exit if things don't go well, but also allows them to pay him respectably and have him feel like he's respected and he's wanted in the building. He's in a very stable scenario right now for the first time, I think, in his career in the NFL. He's in a place that wants him to be who he is. He's in a place that caters the offense to who he is. And he's in a place that, they like I said, they want him to be here. And so I think that's a big deal to him. And stability is going to be a little bit more important than maybe, 10 or 12 extra $1 million somewhere else. And then after the game yesterday, he said, I'd love to be back. He more than appreciative for what the Bucs gave him as an organization in terms of the opportunity to play here and giving him that kind of third chance of resurrecting his career. But he said, if I'm back, I want Mike back. And that tells me that he's willing to play ball with the Bucs, willing to take a little bit of a pay cut to make sure that Mike gets his and he's able to stay here. So I would say 3 years in that $90 to $100 million with a lot of it guaranteed up front, maybe like, I don't know, 75 to 80, maybe 60 million guaranteed, just to kind of lighten that load throughout the rest of the contract and give the Bucs an easy out if things do not play out and Baker, somehow implodes. But again, that puts the Bucs in a really good scenario of going out, drafting best player available this coming draft and not having to worry about the quarterback, not having to force a pick, I believe it'll be 26 now. They'll be picking. Forcing a quarterback at 26 is not a good thing, especially if the guys that you really want are gone and someone just kind of slides who's like, maybe. And we saw how it kind of played out with Kyle Trask in the second round. But I'm not a fan of just taking a pick because you have to take that pick. I feel like you need to take the best player available. And if you have what I consider the short-term answer, maybe the long-term answer with Baker, then you kind of roll with it. And then if things don't go well, you've at least built the team up for maybe a year or two more to where you can go and get that young quarterback. Then you have your 5-year window with their rookie contract to go out there and win. And you've now had, surrounded him with a bunch of good guys and a bunch of playmakers. And now you're kind of in a really good win-win scenario. So that's what Baker's, ability to do what he's done in 2023 affords the Bucs. And I think it was an awesome risk and an awesome gamble, and it paid off for both sides. The one thing that I would say about Baker is there will be other teams that will be interested, but I think, like I said, he's going to give the Bucs the first opportunity, and I don't think the Bucs are going to let him leave. Now, the next one on the list is the one that everyone is really going to be worried about. That's Mike Evans. And things didn't seem great at the beginning of the season when his agent gave the Bucs an ultimatum and a deadline, and I don't think that was anything more than, a car salesman being a car salesman in terms of his agent. Mike and Jason, very, very close. That's Jason's first draft pick as a general manager in the NFL. It's a big deal. They have a very, very good relationship. They understand that business is business. And the Bucs understood that if they were going to take a risk of letting this guy play and prove himself one way or the other, that means they were okay with the risk of either paying a little bit or paying a lot. And I think they understood that going in, that if Mike balls out, they're going to have to pay him. And it's a mutual interest for him to come back. He wants to play with Baker. Baker wants him back. That's, a little bit of a recruitment thing going on there. The Bucs want Baker. The Bucs want Mike back. So I think the Bucs are in a really good scenario and a very good situation to keep both those guys. Regardless of all the noise and what other people are saying, I really don't see Mike Evans uprooting his family and going to any place outside of Florida or Texas. Now, Houston Texans would be the only other team that I think would be an option for him. But I don't see why the Bucs wouldn't keep Mike. He's a generational guy. He's literally on their Mount Rushmore. He's the greatest offensive player in this team's entire history, and it's not even close. Like, what's funny is the second best is also on this team, playing currently in Chris Godwin. But at the end of the day, they understand things. They understand what the timetable is. Mike and Jason yesterday, they basically said that we know when we're going to come back and start talking. They have an understanding. And that leads me to believe that they're both in a good place. The conversations are in a good place, and that Mike Evans will retire a Buccaneer. I think a 3-year deal matching him up with Baker will be really, really good, really solid, and give him the opportunity to break the records he wants to break and ultimately retire as a Buck. And the last one on the list is a man who balled out this entire season, proved himself beyond a doubt, and a guy that the Bucs drafted and were hoping that they'd be able to give him a second contract, which tells me he's not going anywhere. And that's Antoine Winfield Jr. Played his, he played his butt off, okay? This guy was an all-pro, was snubbed from the Pro Bowl. Ultimately, that doesn't matter because it's a popularity contest, but it does affect you Hall of Fame-wise. But I think he's going to have quite a few of those in his time, so I'm not too worried about it. But he made first-team All-Pro, arguably Defensive Player of the Year. You can make a very good argument for him to be Defensive Player of the Year. Didn't see a lot from him yesterday and against the Eagles, but he was making plays, obviously. It's just not the splash plays we're used to. But at the end of the day, the Bucs are in a really good position, and they wanted him to be in this position, and they have an understanding on those two sides of things as well. The way to keep him from leaving is to franchise tag him. So if there's a guy on this list, these 18, that the Bucs would franchise tag, it would be Antoine, in my opinion. And that's not even to have him play on the tag. It's just to buy themselves some time to continue to negotiate, to keep other teams away. And if anybody's willing to give you two first-round picks to take him off that franchise tag, then you have a conversation on your hands. But again, it keeps those teams away. And it lets you focus on him. It lets you focus on getting a deal done and ultimately not having him play on that tag. Worst case scenario, he plays on the tag, but I think they will come to an agreement at some point before the season starts or whatever that deadline is. But it's a good way to kind of force the teams to stay away. And if anybody wants to throw two first-round picks at him, that's insane. I don't see anyone doing that for a safety. No offense to him. But the Bucs are in, again, a really good situation this year to be able to keep the guys they want to keep, bring back the guys they want to bring back. Will Golston is also on that list. I believe Greg Gaines is on that list, who, if he wants to come back as a rotational guy, that's cool. And a lot of them are not going to kill your cap. So a lot of these guys are going to be affordable depth pieces, and the Bucs should still have enough to kind of go out in free agency and, fix some of the secondary issues. Maybe get somebody in the safety department to play with Antoine a little bit if you don't draft the guy, or even have both of those scenarios. In years past, Jason Light's kind of gone into free agency and done this, and then done the same exact thing in the draft to kind of push things together and give himself an option with a veteran and a rookie. So look for those kinds of things to happen. I think the Bucs are in a really good situation. Like I said, the ability to do what they did in a rebuilding type of scenario in a year that they were not supposed to win, to go out there to compete, to continue building a winning culture, and ultimately for Todd Bowles to say, I'm not going anywhere. I deserve at least one more year. Let me show you guys what I maybe can do. And again, Dave Canales, his first-year play caller in the NFL since high school. He had his ups, he had his downs. I was pretty critical throughout a lot of it, but he's afforded himself another season, another year with his quarterback, another year with these guys, and to kind of continue to build and to grow and to learn. And this doesn't happen overnight. And so at the end of the day, the Bucs, I think, are very happy. They're very satisfied with what they ended up, finishing out the season with. A lot of stuff they can build on moving forward, a lot of confidence that they can take from this and kind of continue to build moving forward. Listen, this team is not rebuilding like everyone thinks they are. They've shown that. And as a Bucs fan myself, I am super proud of how they finished up the season, how they continued to build through the season, how they responded to adversity from the outside, and how they responded to adversity within the moments, within those games. I'm just proud of it, man. So, hey, that's all I got for you guys today. Make sure, if you want to see more, check us out on YouTube, youtube.com/@Loose Cannons Podcast. That's Loose Cannons Podcast. Go out there, hit a subscribe button for us, hit the like button on the latest videos if you watch them, and leave us some comments. And we should be live again tonight around 7:20-ish to go a little bit more in depth with what we saw yesterday and maybe some more of the conversation looking forward and maybe into the draft. We're going to have a fun offseason on the YouTube channel, so make sure you guys join us there. And also, don't forget to check me out on the Fully Loaded podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and wherever you listen. I have an audio-only podcast that I host with a friend of mine, JC Cornell, who's got some connections with the NFL as well. So, listen, been a fun season. I'm glad I got to hang out with you guys throughout most of it. We'll see you guys throughout the offseason and a bunch of cool stuff here and on our YouTube channel. Go Bucs.
Now, Tom Brady's at the helm, brought his first mate, Gronk. Hell yeah, it's going down, getting nasty in the trenches, man. Nah, they don't want that. Steady, just the worst. Steve Smith, Ali Marpet, coming acting hungry, getting worked by chancing. Chef until the whistle, boy, you serve them pancakes. Giving Brady time to drop back and hit Cam Brate. First down, Tampa.